Okay, so kind of taking, or I guess kind of moving on from CS education and whether it's in the classroom or in the environment. Let's actually move on to kind of some of the associations that startups like to make themselves seem different or seem better than large companies. So startups will often pitch like personal ownership as a differentiator from large companies. They'll say, oh, you can come work here and you can totally own a project and you can ship code really quickly. Given y'all's experience, does this really hold water? And is it an exclusive trait of startups? I mean, is it something that you just patently will not find at a large company? So,
I don't think it's necessarily something that you can't find at a large company. I just think that large companies are set up not to offer that type of experience to people directly out of school. They're generally set up to have a program where you go through this type of education and then you jump into the real work once you are a full-time employee. Startups, especially so like early stage startups like ours, so like we're 4 people full time right now. The people that are coming on even as summer interns are owning critical parts of our product. It's not just like we give them a project that they get to own. They are actually developing the product that we are putting out in front of people and like critical aspects of it. And I don't know like how that maps to like experiences like at more established startups like Path, but I think that that's one of the best things about us being in that kind of environment is you get to ship things that people use.
We'll kind of add on to the Path, like you mentioned Path. I feel like it's not necessarily like, so I feel like even with Apple's retained the passion to it, like unlike a lot of large companies. Like, I was talking to my friend Chris Wendell, I don't know if some of you know him, and like, we've always wanted to work at Apple. Like, it's always been like a drive to like, just, I don't know, like we really care about the product, we always use the products, like the iPhone canals. It's one of those companies that maintains that passion, and I feel that startups are more likely to have people really excited about building it. But I think companies like Apple have successfully maintained that same feel, like you're really excited to go work there and build that stuff. I just feel like when a company gets too large, I feel like they lose that same feel.
It's the natural thing. You have to, like, the companies that people want to go work for in the technology industry, like the Googles and the Apples, and that's what they do, though. They put a lot of effort in maintaining that sense of, everyone's really excited about what they're working on and, has a lot of ownership even early on.
Yeah. That's something I don't think it's necessarily completely exclusive to small companies. You can find that at large companies, but I know that's this sort of ownership and making a real impact on the product are one of the reasons that I really like Nutshell. Over I worked for a couple summers at an auto engineering supplier out in Farmington Hills, doing some like software development and software testing stuff. And I actually did some really cool stuff there, but not a line of code that I wrote there ever actually saw the light of day in a shipping product. Compare that to Nutshell, where stuff that I'm writing gets shipped and gets used by thousands of people on a weekly basis, and the stuff that I write is critical to the company, is critical to the business, and there's a lot of responsibility too. There, right? If I ship a really bad bug in our iOS app, then people are going to see that too. But
you might get some hate mail.
Yeah, not that happened once, but but just that sort of ownership and really making a concrete impact on the business is really attractive.
Yeah. So definitely, like with big companies, right, you have to be really careful about this because it is like hit or miss. There are some teams, like at Microsoft, the Azure team apparently runs like a lot like a startup, right? They're like really quick, they move fast and everything. And then, I had a friend who worked on like the game studios. He got to like actually write code for Gears of War 4 now. What's the new one? The one that, is it Gears of War 4? I don't know. Gears of War 4 or whatever. And then like, so that's like really cool, but then like my project wasn't so cool. It was like an internal tool, right? So yeah, I don't know, like it's definitely hit or miss. So you have to like, when you're talking to your employers, like the HR people, like make it known that you really want to work on like a project that's actually meaningful, and they'll probably do their best to like help you out, so yeah.
Cool. And so, Andrew, you were talking about working at Path, but that you got last summer, but you're going to be at Apple this summer. Mm-hmm. And so from the way you described it, it sounds like they both have this kind of passion, but I guess is there a particular reason that you chose to go with, all things being equal, a company that's larger rather than a company that's smaller?
Yeah, actually, so when I was at Path, they're at a point where they're growing So they had enough people where they couldn't just have like no leader, like no official managers. No, they had to have somebody step in and like, I'm head of mobile, I'm head of business, and that kind of led to either confusion or frustration. People thought they were going to be the leader and then they weren't picked. So it was at a point where they just didn't have a structure really in place yet. And before I worked at Path, we were a company called Detroit Labs, and they were at a point also where they didn't really have any official leaders and any official teams. I really wanted to experience a company that had a successful leadership structure in place, and that's kept people somewhat happy for over how many years Apple's been a company. So I just wanted to see that leadership structure in place and how that works and how people go past this point of, okay, we have like 40 people now, how do we actually run, manage these people?
For context, how many people was Path and Detroit Labs when you felt that way?
So for the Detroit Labs, I never really came into question because it was so small.
Okay.
But at Path, it was like, I think there was about 40 people when I started, and now it's 60. So it's definitely hitting a point where we have, 6 iOS engineers. How do we, who does what? How do we pick, what person does this thing? So there's just a point where like they didn't know how to do that yet, and I wanted to see a company that's figured that out.
That is an important point too. So like a lot of people, they go work for startups because they want to go start their own company, and I think that experience. Like I think you have to at some point to get that experience. But all startups are trying to be big companies at some day too. So having experience in that type of environment will help you transition into becoming a big company a lot smoother than someone who hasn't, I think.
Yeah, and just like aside from like, when you as a company grows, aside from like getting more managers or like more bosses or whatever, right? What's like some of the other things that ends up happening is like code sustainability starts becoming a lot more important, right? You can't just like randomly like ship code anymore. Like code reviews become a lot more intense and like they have to get signed off by other people. So like, the rate at which you ship code like hopefully won't slow down, but like chances are it will. So Facebook's like trying to like keep up with it. There's no way in hell they will. Right? Like, they can't ship code that fast anymore. They can't. They won't.
So